Welcome to Tech
Town!
Season 3, Episode 8 of the place where you come to learn about all things tech.
That's right.
I'm Mr. Ellsberg. This is our Town Wizard.
Town Wizard.
And we're going to talk to you today about encryption.
Encryption. That's right. Encryption. We've talked a little bit about it before. You may hear it in our security segments. But you may have heard it in the news recently because encryption and privacy and terrorists are all kind of in the news these days. So let's set it straight. Let's figure out how to do it right, because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of kind of emotional information going on.
Yeah, and luckily we have a resident crypt keeper right over here. He's going to tell us all about the encrypting process. What is it? What is encryption?
Yeah, so let's start with what is encryption, right? The idea is that there can be some text, some information, anything you want, that can be jumbled up into these random characters that if anybody gets these random characters, they can't figure out what the original message was.
Okay.
But if someone has a secret key, a secret little decoder ring, you can think of it, then they can go from the jumbled up mess back to the original message.
Right. It reminds me of the Christmas Story movie when the kid gets a little Ovaltine from a little orphan Annie, and he figures out what it's gonna say.
It says, "Be sure to drink your Ovaltine."
No, man, no. We're gonna talk about some real cool stuff like Nick Cage. Where is the treasure? It's behind the Constitution. Stuff. All right.
Yeah, that kind of encryption.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Okay, so. First of all, that's what encryption is. Now, why the whole kind of theme of this episode is why encryption is good.
Okay.
Because a lot of what we're hearing now, especially in the last couple of weeks since the attacks in Paris, are that encryption can make it hard for law enforcement to find terrorists.
Right.
So I'm kind of trying, I want to also say that I agree it's important to help find these terrorists and find, criminals when they need to be found.
Right.
So it's not that we should never find terrorists.
So right now the pendulum is swinging against security and privacy. Right. For the greater good. And so because of these recent events, they're like, well, take these liberties that we, obviously don't need as much because we get these terrorists. Let's start bringing back, torturing and all this stuff and whatever to get these people. But the pendulum will eventually swing back,
The pendulum's a good way to look at it. And right now, when the pendulum kind of is at the most extreme, is kind of the most important time to then remind yourself that the pendulum needs to swing back a little bit. And to kind of take a little action, because sometimes when the pendulum swings like this, you get things like the Patriot Act, where they get to be big laws that really affect the future of how things go. Right.
And so there's some, you got stuff that you don't want people to see. Yeah. Is a big thing. So, it's your own stuff. You get your stuff, you get to see your stuff, and it's for you.
Right. So, and they call that privacy. So now,
so I got pants.
So privacy,
I want to keep everything below my pants.
We're very happy for that. We want encryption on your lower half.
Well, I am very self-conscious about that now.
Okay, well, don't worry. Privacy is good. We're kind of saying encryption is good, and you're sort of saying the same thing as privacy is good.
Right.
And encryption is harder to find in the Constitution because they don't use the word encryption.
Right.
So really a lot of it is about privacy, but they do talk about privacy and the Fourth Amendment of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. Right. So we have this existing system for privacy.
Right.
It's just now being applied to information on computers.
Right.
But it still really is the same sort of thing as what has always existed. For example, let's say you have your house. You have stuff in your house. The police can't just bust down your doors. Like the kings used to in England, used to just have people get raided, no reason or anything, and just get their stuff taken and get arrested. Yep. You can't do that. You have to have a warrant, a search warrant. So the equivalent needs to happen for your data.
Right.
It's the argument that comes up a lot with privacy and encryption too, or against it, is if you don't have anything to hide. It's like, well, I don't care about encryption because I don't have anything to hide.
Right.
There are a lot of arguments against this, a lot of good arguments against this, because that's a bad way to look at it.
Well, for one of them would be, right now you don't have anything to hide.
Yes.
But if the laws change, then now you have something to hide, because what was legal before is now illegal, or circumstances change, so now you have to start doing something that was illegal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of one example of many that I would put in the category of anyone who ever needs privacy. You know, you're not just talking about yourself and I need privacy,
right?
Or I don't need privacy, and so I don't care about these laws. You're talking about everybody, and everybody in the United States and their situations. And if a government changes their mind on things, which you've seen governments go bad, and use information to really, you know, take people away in the middle of the night. So, bottom line is, encryption is good because encryption is like privacy. Privacy is good because we already have a history of why privacy is important. So let's kind of assume that. Now, when we talk about encryption, sometimes there's arguments of how we can live in a world where there is encryption, but also that there is a way for the government or others to decrypt these things. So now that's where things get a little dicier, and that's why I want to kind of talk about it, because that's where it gets a little harder to understand. So there's a lot of arguments that the government would use to not let us have perfectly unbreakable encryption. Because really, that's what I'm kind of proposing as the goal, is unbreakable encryption that everybody can easily use. So the government might say, well, we need to be able to do, you know, our secret investigations and find terrorists. So let's, as the government, put in a backdoor. They call it a backdoor, which means everything else is the same about the encryption, in that you know, people can go about their business, they have their privacy, they have things being encrypted, and nobody can break it, except the government has this secret special key that nobody knows how to use except for the government. So the government will say, let's have encryption so you can all feel good, but then we can have our key to get in when we need. That sounds nice. You know, if you were to just take it at that, then sure, let's do that.
Everyone in the U.S. trusts the government.
So yeah, here's where the problem comes in. Number one, how can you ensure the government's going to use that power properly? And that's why you would theoretically have a justice system. You'd have like the judicial branch and the legislative branch keeping them in check. That hasn't happened. We have not kept them in check. They can do whatever they want, and the Congress doesn't even know what's going on.
You kind of come up with reasons why it's okay after they do something illegal.
Yeah, right. And you can do what you want and then sort of backpedal. So even, you know, if the government had the power to do that, even if it was possible to make this backdoor, which I'm about to tell you why it isn't, then number one, the government would you know, abuse the power at some point, and that'd be no good. Number two, and this is almost even more important, there is no way that we're going to keep that secret just to the government. Of all the stuff that's ever happened, we can see how little we can keep secrets, and how things get leaked, and how problems happen, and not in the ways that you even expected.
Well, the government is made up of people like you and I. And so there's some things that you want to talk about with other people when you learn about them at work or something, anything, even just decompressing, or you get somebody at a moment of weakness, you know, you tempt somebody with something.
Or there's crazy amounts of money involved. Let's say there's some lobbyist who's going to shovel a bunch of money to some person to you know, steal information or do whatever, or pass laws. So in the case where the government lets that secret get out somehow, that's an even worse world, because then hackers have the back door and can get into everything. And that's like the worst case scenario. So even worse than no government being able to investigate anything is hackers having control of everything. So that's all, even if the backdoor was possible. Now, how is a backdoor possible? The government, I would say, hey, government, you say you want a backdoor. Okay, show me the open source code of what your encryption will do, and then we'll see if there is potentially this backdoor that you can you know, use somehow, because you'll show us how it works. You can keep your secret key locked up how you need, but just show us how it's going to work, because that's how open source in the world works. Is like, here how things work. The government has not proposed anything. They're all talk. They're just saying we could theoretically have a system where it would work, but there's no plan. They haven't submitted anything for review or anything. So
what they're basically saying is that they're going to invent a wheel.
They're going to invent a wheel. They're going to keep it super secret. It's going to be perfect, and they're only going to use it at the perfect times. And every single one of those categories is going to break down. So That's
boom.
Okay, so now another alternative that the government says: let's ban encryption.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe
one
encryption
one
thing's
extreme, everything's encrypted. Government has the back door. This extreme, no encryption.
No encryption.
Everybody sees everything.
Right. We need to be able to catch criminals. I'm willing
Total
to
transparency.
give up on that. Or even lesser versions of that, of like using weak encryption. So maybe we'll use encryption that most people can't hack, but the government can because they're powerful enough.
Right.
Now, this argument's interesting because math.
Okay.
So here's the problem.
Math.
The cat's out of the bag. The genie is out of the proverbial bottle, and encryption exists. Encryption is based on math. There are computers that basically just do math to make encryption. So if certain people decide they don't want to use that, that doesn't prevent people from using it because it exists. It just exists.
Right.
You can't take it back.
You can't uncreate encryption.
Right. You could uncreate or disinvent or something computers, but you can even use encryption on pencil and paper.
Right.
So you can't stop people from communicating privately.
Yep.
You can't. Some of them are gonna be terrorists. Most everybody is gonna be just everybody.
Yeah.
But
it's fun to have your own language you speak with your friends too.
Right.
I mean, like
people are gonna invent that. The government's gonna come knocking down on little kids' doors saying, "No, you are using your secret language with your friends."
Too many inside jokes.
Yep. Oh wow. So banning encryption just is crazy because other people are going to use it because it exists.
Right.
If you tell people not to, sorry, the terrorists are already doing things you're telling them not
to. And if one person uses it, then everyone.
Right. Anybody could use it, right?
Anyone can use it.
All right. So another thing that the government sometimes says is let's capture everybody's internet traffic.
Okay.
But it's going to be encrypted, so we can't read it. So then you shouldn't worry about it. My argument is don't capture all the traffic in the first place.
Right.
You should have a warrant to capture traffic.
Right.
They're saying, oh, it's encrypted, so that's okay because we can't even read it. Well, the keys are going to get stolen and somebody's going to be able to read it. They're going to leak it. Right. They're not telling the truth. Where's the oversight? So again,
I'm not sure if I'm totally getting what you're saying.
Oh, okay. So imagine that all of my internet traffic is encrypted. We're in this world I'm kind of proposing where everything's encrypted.
Everything's encrypted.
Another thing the government can say is, well, since everything's encrypted and there's no way we can figure any of this stuff out, we're going to make a copy of it all, everything everyone's doing, and put it in giant data centers in Utah and just store it there, even though we can't read it, even though it's all the jumbled gobbledygook.
That's what they're hiding under the arches.
Exactly. See, and that's what Nicolas Cage is looking for.
Yeah, okay.
Problem is, if someone gets the keys and can hack that stuff or leak that stuff, or if the government decides they want to look into it in a time then it's not legal.
Right.
So my argument is don't let them copy every little bit of data in the first place. So even in this way, encryption is still only one part of the deal. Right. There's all these other layers on top of it. So
boom.
All right, we're gonna
encryption.
We're gonna we got more, but no, we're gonna blow through this stuff. So another reason that encryption is good. We kind of talked about the counter arguments the government might give, but here's more arguments of why encryption is good. Encryption is good for business, especially here in the U.S., because companies like Facebook and Google and Microsoft, some of these biggest companies in the world, are under U.S. rule, and if the U.S. says we can see into your private communications, your customers' private communications, those companies are going to lose business.
Right.
So if you're a Chinese person or a Chinese government or any other person around the world, and you know the U.S. government has access to see all of your transactions on Facebook or Google Gmail or anything like that,
you won't use it.
You won't use it. Or somebody else will make a new company that uses real encryption and does it right.
Right.
So that is a ton of business that could shift and go away, which we don't want. Right. The U.S. is kind of depending on these tech companies and their revenue and taxes and things. So we don't want to lose that business.
All of these businesses are based on data, personal data.
Yeah.
Facebook, here's my profile, here's my pictures of my kids and the cool stuff that I do. And here's the places that I like to watch and follow.
Yeah.
And if you know it's someone out there from, let's say, like hypothetically, like North Korea or Iran or Russia or any place is going to be taking a look at you, and then all of a sudden you fly to some neutral country and then they get you.
Yep. Exactly.
Like they could do that.
Oh yeah.
And so think about coming from their angle, looking at the U.S.
That's a good way to look at it.
And so the U.S. has all these companies that people are using around the world.
Okay, so we talked about encryption and keys. So encryption depends on a few things, one of them being the keys.
Right.
And these keys are sort of what unlocks that message. So you can imagine once it went from the normal message to the gobbledygook, you have this gobbledygook key to unencrypt it, decrypt it.
Right.
Now, what I was saying is, what about these keys, and what if the government kind of loses track of them or something? So there's a couple things to remember about the keys. Where are they stored? So the halfway decent answer is not with the government.
Okay.
With like Google. Let's say Google stores the keys that unlock all of your Google traffic.
Yep.
That's pretty good. And then Facebook stores the keys that unlocks all your Facebook traffic. So only you and Google and the person you're sending the message to, the Gmail message, let's say, can decrypt that.
Right.
Now, that's not quite good enough, though. Because if Google can decrypt it, number one, that means Google can decrypt it, and you may not want them to. Number two is that they could lose their data. It could be subpoenaed and asked for by the government. Right. So really, the ideal is trusting nobody with those keys but yourself.
You get the keys.
Exactly.
You get the keys to your stuff.
Exactly.
Right? So you have your own pocket with your wallet is
That's
in
the
it.
idea, right? It's not like the government has a copy of the key to my house. It's that I am the only person with keys.
Right.
And so that you can do that equivalently with encryption.
But like, if there's something obviously illegal going on in your house, the government could put a warrant out and get it just like they could get your key.
Their house key, right, exactly. Or they could bust down your door, right? So, and then the other interesting one is, and this is a little more technical, but are the keys ephemeral? Meaning, are they changing? So one way to do encryption is that you can have a key, which is this certain string of numbers and letters, and that's the same key forever, for every message, for every email, for anything that goes on. That's the key.
Right.
And if you find that key, you can decrypt everything.
Right.
That's how people used to do it. But now that's scary. If Google has to give up this one key and now the government can read everybody's emails. So now what you can do with encryption is every new message has a new key. So that you can't go back and sort of decrypt everything. Right. It's basically only the one time that between those certain people that you can decrypt it. And so these are a couple specifics about the keys that you got to get right.
Right.
But
so boom.
All right, last couple things. Well, we're getting it. Encryption isn't the end all be all, right? Even if you do the encryption right and you do the keys right, there's metadata. So like we do encryption for when you send your bank account information to your bank website. You're typing in your password. That password is encrypted, but the fact that you went to that bank's website is not encrypted. Oh. So the government knows which websites you're going to.
Right.
That needs to be encrypted or anonymous. So that's a whole nother level. So even when you think you're okay with the whole encryption thing and you got your secret message, encrypted, you have to think about what computer is it coming from and going to and all that kind of stuff. So last thing to say, the goal of what people are trying to get at is a noble goal, which is how do we stop this crazy madness? How do we stop the killing? How do we stop the death? How do we stop the terrorists?
Right.
My take on that is first and foremost, let's change ideas. Let's not figure out how to find and kill people. Let's figure out why are people being terrorists and stop that from happening.
Right. So you try to get at the cause. You try to prevent it from ever happening in the first place.
Yeah.
Make people want to be around and kill themselves.
So let's not lose sight of that. Yeah. We want the peace part of this. We don't want to deal with it. So that's what we should be doing. Now, we can't just do that all the time. There is encryption and technology and terrorism and
there's
stuff.
Crazy people too that can be convinced otherwise.
Exactly.
I mean, you see superhero movies. There's just some bad supervillains out there, man.
It's true.
Yep.
It's true. And so I think the things that we can do are get the process of encryption right, but then understand search warrants. So let's figure out how we can use search warrants in the situations where we do have enough evidence to then go figure out how to decrypt certain things.
Right.
I think that's huge. Search warrants. Let's figure that part out. And then the other is having a balance, a checks and balances. Right now we have the NSA and law enforcement agencies kind of doing whatever they want, where we need the legal system and the congressional system, whatever, those two other branches.
Right, legislative, the judicial, and the executive.
I guess the executive is kind of the one that's doing what they want. It's kind of what I'm thinking. They're not really
they're all running rampant out there.
Whatever it is, right? You don't run rampant.
Yeah.
Get some checks and balances.
Yep.
So I have a link to a blog where you can read all about it. This is good stuff. Basically, encryption is really good.
Yep. We got to do it, man.
We got to do it.
We got to do it. You're not just going to have the same key and give everyone the same key to their stuff.
No.
You know, someone's going to walk around using the same key and getting into everybody's stuff.
Won't work.
Yeah. Everyone's got to have their own key, own stuff. And that's it. Encryption. You're here to hear at Tech Town. We'll be back before you know it. And we'll take care. Have a great holiday.
Yeah. Later.